I enjoy going into a costume room and them just being rails and rails of deliciously expensive designer clothes that I keep my eye on for the costume sale.
When you get to the point where it's a sort of series, and presumably you're not shooting chronologically and you're shooting all over the world and, you know, jumping from location to location, is there ever a sense that you're on any kind of treadmill? Do you get, you know, or do you always get that kind of sense of focus at the point when somebody says action?
Yeah, absolutely. It's always there. And I think what's wonderful about Killing Eve is a lot of the crew come back every year. Like there's a real, I don't want to say well, it is. It's like, you know, it's like a family unit in a way, and people want to come back and they want to carry this story on, and they're very passionate about what it is that they're making. And you can really feel that. And, you know, they're very supportive and respectful of the things that you have to do on set on any, you know, given particular day or what you may need on that day. And exactly what Glenda says is you feel that everybody there is wanting to do their absolute best. And I think that is so infectious. And it also makes you want to bring your A game and be the best that you can possibly be. So no, I don't think that ever goes. I don't think.
You recognise that, Suranne, having done lots of series where you're you know, working with the same character over a long period of time?
I was just picking up on something Glenda said about rehearsal. We have the luxury of rehearsal. Like, it's really important to us because in the same way as Villanelle, I guess, like there's so many, like I'm playing a very highly intelligent woman who is hiding a lot, and she is an orator, and she like, I'm like, oh my, when I got it, I was like, oh no, I have to be this intelligent on screen. That's a lot of work that goes in. And when I watch you, Jodie, I always think that's a lot of work before you get to where you get to. Even with like natural talent, you've still got to put all that work in. So we do rehearse lots of scenes so that we have the luxury of then letting the magic happen. And I've never had that before, so that's really nice. But yeah, I always get the buzz of, you know, and action, because you're just like, and now it has to come. But I love it. I think Gentleman Jack's just a very different beast than that. You know, I haven't worked on anything this tough before. The amount of lines, you work Monday to Friday, you finish on a Friday night. I will come home and spend some time with my 4-year-old, and then on Sunday I might have breakfast and then get into learning lines again for the next week. And it's tough. It's a 7.5 month shoot. So it's a lot.
What I loved about your performance particularly as well was the way you kind of embodied her, and your movement I thought was so specific, and something that I enjoyed watching was movement, something that you did a lot of before you got to set.
Yeah, in the diary, it described her as having a certain walk, a certain gait, and people thought she looked like a man, and her voice was deep, and so there was loads of clues in the diaries. So we played around. Sally had me walking around rehearsal rooms watching me, and it was, that bit was fun because and goes back to how to push it, because I thought I was doing loads, but once you get the cravats and the coats, and then the top hat is massive. I mean, it comes like, it's so huge. I had it here the other day and I was like, is it really that big? So you be as big as the hat. And it feels really odd. I guess with your character as well, and possibly Glenda, when you were doing those kind of outbursts, you feel like we're all so used to doing delicate pieces, and the camera, you know, and being subtle. So when you have to do something big, it can feel odd, but then when you accept it, it's the best thing ever, because then you get to have fun. But there is a moment where you have to go from subtlety to going, really? Oh, okay, no, this feels good. And then you can play.
Presumably that's exactly the same for both of you, though, because, you know, with Glenda, you sort of had to age up and, you know, become sort of frail and yet... But, you know, become sort of...
If you do lie so sweetly on my back.
Oh, hush.
No, I mean, one of the interesting things about film, whether, you know, it's for film, well, they're all cameras now, aren't they? Is that you do it in such small pieces. So the trick is really hanging on to the energy. I mean, expanding it, but then if there's a hole, hoping it's going to fill up again, because it's very rare to actually shoot in sequence. I don't know how it is for you two doing your series, but I mean, certainly, I remember when I was doing Elizabeth R, we rarely, if ever, shot in sequence. And I invariably had a row with the man on the gate into White City because he would never let me park my car there. Do you know what I mean? So that was an endless run. But what am I actually trying to say here? There is something about being on a set, and it is infinitely helpful when, as Jodie said, you know, the same people were working on it. So there are familiar faces, and you know who they are, and they know who you are, and they treat you like dirt, and that's perfectly okay, because that's the whole you know, that's the basis of working anyway. And I think that makes it possible to move from, you know, things that need to be subtle to things that need to be unsubtle, because there is that all the time. You're actually, when you're lucky, I mean, on this kind of river that is flowing. Sometimes it may feel as though it's flowing backwards, but in fact, you're all there in the same kind of situation, on the same
I think as well, like as a society, as people, we're all so self-aware, and when you're playing these, especially these particular characters, you have to shed that. You have to shed all of that from yourself. And then once you do that, I think it's so liberating. But it's that kind of self-consciousness that you have to get rid of.
You touched on it a little bit, Suranne, by talking about the hat and the cravat, but I think costumes in all three cases are really interesting to talk about here. There's you with, I mean, the opening credits of Gentleman Jack. It's like she's a superhero, sort of putting her costume on. It's so good, yeah. But I mean, how did that kind of impact on the performance? You know, like, you know, did you have a particular way of dressing? Did you talk about the costume she was going to have before you were presented with it?
Yeah, Tom Pye is predominantly a theatre designer. He's done some TV before, but he does operas, and I loved that went onto our screen, because, you know, with Sally's writing, with the character, with the sets, and then with these I mean, I've got quite big shoulders today, but I mean, the women's shoulders are like, you know, like you can't even get on the screen sometimes. And he invited me to be right at the beginning of the process with him, and we went to Cosprops, and we had the male team and the female team, and we pushed it as far as we could with the male costumes, and we took pictures, and then we'd add a little bit of femininity in, and then we'd take it away, and he had all these references, lots of Parisian references of the time of, you know, who was pushing it. Actually, women on horseback kind of dressed a little bit like Gentleman Jack dresses, so she can get away with still dressing feminine if she was going riding, but she's not, and not, you know, and kind of being out in society and challenging gender, like kind of like hiding in plain sight with her dress. So it was all fascinating, all useful, and a lot of the costumes were made for me by John at Cosprops, and yeah, I mean, what a delight to have that. And again, for the next series, they're making some amazing stuff. So I just think our team is just brilliant, beyond.
Same for you, Jodie. I mean, Villanelle's costumes kind of transcended the show. Actually, there was a BAFTA exhibition while the BAFTA main premises was closed, and the one thing everybody went for was Villanelle's dress, which was one of the sort of prize exhibits. How did what kind of conversations did you have about the wardrobe, and how does that wardrobe enable you as a character?
Yeah, well, for me, what I love witnessing is the playfulness that the costume designers find when they get this opportunity, you know, especially Sam, who came up for season 3. The way they kind of see that as a playground, and there's no kind of rules of wrong or right. I just push that all to them, and I enjoy going into a costume room and them just being rails and rails of deliciously expensive designer clothes that I keep my eye on for the costume sale. But I honestly, I kind of love just giving them the reins to have fun with it. And then for me, it's all about trying it on. And a big thing for Villanelle is, yes, it's fashion, but it's got to be comfortable. It's got to be practical. You know, and I remember, you know, talking to Phoebe early on, it's like, she's not going to scale a wall in 6-inch heels. Like, okay, it happens in Hollywood, but it's not going to happen here. You know, what would she be wearing so that she can do what she needs to do? So it's always a huge, you know, it's always so much fun when I get to see what they've picked out.
And then talking of practical and comfortable, Maud's outfits for Maud's costumes, for Elizabeth are, I mean, in a way, that's where kind of costume designers are kind of unsung, when they produce the wardrobe to give you a character like Maud. How much were you presented with that coat, those shoes, and how much did you contribute to that?
My one guiding principle was that everything she wore must look as though she'd worn it for a long time. That's the thing that I can't stand when you see people, you know, supposedly in whatever the character is, and they've obviously never worn that, whatever they're wearing before. And so that was a big, you know, plus. I mean, it's easy to get clothes and to make them look as though you've worn them a lot. And that was my big driver. But I remember when I was doing Elizabeth R., which was we would rehearse and then we'd have to go back to White City as it was in the old days for costume fittings and things like that. And it was a costume fitting for me for my sister Mary's, either coronation or wedding, I can't remember which it was. And so the dress was white, glorious. And the people who made it were absolutely brilliant. And I'm not good at standing upright for any length of time. And I passed out. I was on the floor and I came to, and I heard the voice of the costume designer saying, "Don't get any blood on that dress. Don't get any blood on that dress." Because I, of course, had been pinned into it. And I thought, that's a caring voice if ever I had.
Caring for
the costume.
So true. Like you just stand there and let people work around you. And it's the amount of times that you're literally like, I just and not or anything just to keep me going, because it's exhausting after a day of just a knot will do.
Just one.
Because you leave those sessions like, because you are just stood there letting people work and play with your face, play with your hair, play with, you know, just play with you. And those are the days that you go, what have I haven't done anything today, but I'm absolutely exhausted.
Yes, exactly. I wanted to film in Italy, and it was a costume fitting, and the designer was there, this middle-aged gentleman, dottore as they're all called him, and these 3 absolutely dedicated women who made the costumes. And I'm standing there, and he's criticizing them, and he's criticizing the costumes, and they are, you know, I mean, absolutely not actually begging to be forgiven. And I thought, do they know I'm here? Because it was all going on around, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
This huge drama. And then I thought to myself, they don't know you're here. You're not important. It's the costume that's important. And that's quite a salutary thing to have thrown at you, unbeknownst by the people who throw it.